Welcome back to Women Making Moves, where we celebrate the moves that women are making. My name is Amy Pons. I'm a master certified life coach and an energy healer. I'm joined today with Hallie Avolio. Hallie is not a typical anything. That includes woman, mother, friend, entrepreneur, or coach. Hallie is an affirmation queen, a lover of core values, and is obsessed with empowering humans to create a life they love, aka a fuck yes life. Through her coaching, Hallie works with you to activate your limitless potential by shifting your mindset, opening up your intuition, and taking action on your dreams. It's time to get unstuck, find self-love, manifest your purpose, and live this life to the fullest. She is the founder and president of Sassy Healthy Fit, an organization created with the mission to teach as many humans as possible to love themselves unconditionally and create a fuck yes life, and to make this world a brighter place through each of our unique gifts. Hallie, welcome.
Hi, Amy. Thank you so much for having me. It's awesome to be here today.
It's awesome to have you. Fun fact, when I first started my business, and I still actually do have one of my coaching packages that's called Remember Who the Fuck You Are. That was my tagline when I first started my business. And it was such a, depending on the audience, I wasn't trying to be shock and awe, but it ended up coming out as, it's like, ooh, ooh, whoa, whoa. Because it was usually like, I was on these networking calls at like 8 a.m. and I would suddenly be blasting out, fuck. And it was like, whoa, whoa. And I never knew necessarily how it would land, but it did absolutely get people's attention. Do you find the same?
Absolutely. And it's funny because it took me quite a while actually to own it. And I would kind of dance around the words and it would say like living your best life, living your, number one life. And then I was like, wait a second, wake up call. Let me be my most authentic self and
Mm.
use the word that truly suits the energy of what I'm talking about. And I've had plenty of people say things to me along the lines of, why do you have to use profanity? It degrades the message. It makes it less potent. It takes away from something. And to them, I say, maybe for you, but for me, the reason I use that word, it's not to be explicit or to, like you said, shock and awe value, but it's an energy, it's a sensation, it's a frequency. It's like fuck yes, which is very different than I'm here to live my best life. In my feeling, like those are very different things. They just carry a different energetic frequency and I prefer it. But I'd love to share a quick story. I recently rejoined my local Chamber of Commerce, and I had actually been not only a member, but the president of the board for a couple of years pre-COVID. So I had been a very active member with my husband's company for many, many years, from being an ambassador, volunteer in every event, president of the board of directors, et cetera, et cetera. Took a break with COVID, just needed a little space. Husband sold his business. I came back in 2024. I said, you know what? I'm going to rejoin the chamber. Let me show up and just really own this business that I have and make a presence locally. And I go to the first meeting. They do a business to business breakfast once a month. And if it's your first time that since you've joined, you get a full minute to introduce yourself. So there's a bunch of us that have joined that day and we're standing in a line in the front of the room, and the president and CEO of the organization, who's a dear friend of mine, she walks around with the microphone and she goes to say, hi, please introduce yourself. Tell us what you do. And so goes down the line, and I think I'm second to last. And she gets to me and I say, hi, my name is Hallie Avolio, and I'm here to help you live your fuck yes life. And not, like, complete mic drop. The room goes kind of silent. And I was so nervous saying it in front of this room of somewhat conservative people, people that certainly were not expecting me to say this, people that had maybe known me previously, but didn't know me in this capacity. So again, it was like this whole thing. I really had to step into my full power and psych myself up to remind myself, this is just who I authentically am. And if somebody doesn't vibe with it, that's okay. There's no judgment. It just is. And afterwards, I was still a little bit nervous, but I felt confident that I had delivered it in the way that felt authentic to me. I felt great about it. People certainly laughed. It got a reaction. I had a few people come up to me afterwards, but I was still thinking about it later. And then as I'm driving home after the event, I get a text from the president of the chamber, and she sends me a message and she says, I'm so glad you're back. Fuck yes. And I was like, all right, cool. Because I was so worried that she was going to be like, Hallie, you can't say that here in this room. But it was fantastic. The whole thing was like so affirming, like this is my jam and I'm fully embodied in this energy.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because I had the exact opposite experience at my local chamber when I started my business, because I was wanting to get, why not get some local establishment? Why not
Right.
get with some local businesses? And I walked into the first meet and greet, or whatever they called it. It was like a luncheon, and all white men, like mid to older white men. And so at the time, I wasn't as sure. And I said, I help you remember who the fuck you are. And not not my peeps, not my jam. It was not received well. And so even though same later on, I find that in the room, people were taken aback, but I got some messages later that are like, what's this about? What do you do? What do we do? And what I come to find is whether you cuss or not in your branding and in your message, for me, what it is, it's the energetic embodiment of the divine feminine, of saying, we're here, we're taking up space, and I have room for you. It gets to be both. And so I toy with it. I jump in and out of what I say on any given day. It's what I'm flowing with feeling. And I feel like depending on how spiritual someone is, they're like, what do you do? I'm like, I'm a healer and a warrior. And some people are like, oh, cool. Some people are like, I don't understand. I'm like, yes. So then it's like on paper, I'm a life coach, a healer, energy worker, light worker, whatever you want to call all those things. And we go from there. But I'm not interested in tailoring who I am any longer. I did that for 40 years. It's not happening anymore.
Amen. Amen to that. I mean, imagine how different this world would be if we all kind of stripped away those I don't know if they're not even ideals, but the beliefs, the labels. There's a duality though, right? Because our brains want to organize and compartmentalize because that's how our brains know how to make sense of the world around us, right? And so it makes sense that we want to, say, oh, the shirt that you're wearing is purple, or things behind you on the wall are quotes, right? So we want to give everything a title, a label, so that we can make sense of the world around us. But when it comes to our identity, and this is a huge part of the work that I do, we have to be really cautious about what are the words that we use to label ourselves and how do we see ourselves through what lens. But can we also just be really open and curious, like you said, and say, where am I at today? Like, what is it that I meant to receive, and what is it that I meant to give today? And how does that interact with my energetic presence right now in this moment, and based on my lived experience and where I would like to go forward, right? So it has to be very fluid. But for me, that's definitely been a journey. And I think for most people, and I think that because there's been so much learning that things have to be a certain way, and we're very programmed in our society that we follow a certain path. And this is a huge part of my story is, I grew up believing that I had to follow a very specific pathway to find success in my life. And I call it the checkbox life. And if you had asked me, what's an emoji that would describe your growing up experience, it's that little green check mark. And it was fine. I mean, the reality is that a lot of the things that I feel most proud of in my life, namely my children, my husband, my education, a lot of the things that correspond to my core values really are attributed to kind of following that pathway, that checkbox life. Yet at the same time, it also severely limited me. And so I kind of grapple with that. And so I had this same sort of time frame in my 40s where I came into this kind of awakening, like late 30s, early 40s, and realized that it's great to have specific goals, dreams, things that you want to go after, but also it's really wonderful to be curious and open and play with this idea of like, what's possible? Where could I go with this? How do I feel about this in this moment? And if it doesn't feel good, you're like, well, throwing that out for the moment. I'm gonna put that aside and maybe come back to it, maybe not. But either way, I'm going to end up following the path that is meant for me to follow, and I trust that. And so for me, you talk about, the divine feminine, it's the being able to receive that energy of trust. And I believe that the more that we can learn that and to act in that way, the freer that all of us feel to live your fuck yes life, the freer that we feel being humans, the freer that we are to, accept ourselves and to interact with one another and to become abundant, right? Because we don't place these limitations on ourselves.
I think the word trust is so critical because from a young age, especially women, we weren't necessarily taught how to trust ourselves. It was how to, the conditioning, the training that, like you were saying, we've been skewed only in the masculine in like our whole lifetime. This is my philosophy, where it's only about the doing. What are you going to be doing? And for me, the divine feminine of coming in and balancing the feeling, like, what do you want to feel when you do the thing? And Sometimes it's as simple as that. There's been so many times in my personal life where I got the promotion and then I'm like, huh, that didn't, I didn't feel like I thought it would feel because I didn't really
Hmm.
have an expectation. It was just like a constant chasing. So when I talk about the divine feminine, the creation, what do you want to create? Then to work and balance with the divine masculine of the structure to release it then to the world, the creation and the structure. And skewed in either one of them is any extreme is not ideal. You want to have a balance. So that's typically where I try to start with people. And I don't really ask like, oh, what do you do? I'll say, how do you feel today? What's on your heart? What brings you joy? And if they go to their career, like how they earn a living, great. And then I'll probably ask it again. I'll be like, sure, but how do you find joy? And it really takes, again, especially women, in my experience, a little bit longer to actually get to that answer.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely. It's interesting. I recall a conversation I had with a dear friend of mine who is an educator, and she was given an opportunity to go do a Fulbright research scholarship experience in Finland. And so she and her family were living in Helsinki for about 6 months a few years back. And when she returned, we got together and I was asking her all about her experience. And I said, what was some of the biggest differences you noticed living in Helsinki versus living in California? And she said, it's really interesting. People there, they don't ask you about what you do for a living. It's not a thing that people don't, not that they don't care, but it's not like the cornerstone of conversation. Instead, they ask about your hobbies, they ask about your interests. And I thought that really stuck with me. And I thought, gosh, that's so interesting. Imagine what it would be like to, start a fresh interaction with somebody. And instead of introducing yourself and saying, hi, my name is Hallie. What do you do? I'm a coach. I do blah, blah, blah. What do you do? Starting off with something like, hi, my name is Hallie. And gosh, it feels really great today because I got to go spend some time at the beach and I just love being by the water and I love feeling my feet in the sand. And I had so much fun with my kids last night. And what's something that has made you feel really great lately? I mean, that's such a different conversation. And I really do try to incorporate that into my interactions with people because I'm much more interested in knowing, to your point, what brings you joy? What lights you up? What is your soul calling? To me, that's much more interesting than just hearing a checklist of the things that you do. Now that they may merge, but I think going a little bit deeper when we think about ourselves in particular, right? I think that's just so much more meaningful both to our own identity and also to how we represent ourselves in the world around us.
They're all valid. Everything that you feel all day, every day is so valid. And you get to have the choice of whether you opt into or opt out of what comes in. Be like, does that serve me? Is that where I'm really going? Or is that part of the training or conditioning? And you get to choose, and it comes back to that trust. I call it giving yourself full autonomy to assess the copy paste and to step out of the copy paste. And it's like, what does that look like if I were to get out of the copy paste, and what could that mean for me? It could mean anything, and always duality. We have very real 3D responsibilities that it takes to be human. So again, it gets to be both. And for me, after 20 years in corporate, I would have never given the exploration unless there weren't some sort of drastic something put in my pathway by the universe and my guides. I almost envision them in like a huddle and saying like, okay, it's going to have to be something really intense. What are we going to send her? And it was in the form of workplace psychological abuse. And I'm not grateful for the abuse. I'm grateful for that experience to catapult me into what could be, because I was only concerned with the copy paste and like what was required to be on the 3D. So it all gets to be true. And if you have that aching, gnawing, "Ugh, what is that inside you?" Chances are somebody's ringing your doorbell to do some excavating.
I like how you said that. Absolutely. Excavating. I like it. I'm going to excavate whatever is
Yeah.
boiling up inside of me.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
let's go find it
Yeah.
with unabashed bravery, because sometimes it's something that would like scare the crap out of you.
Most of the time.
Like, right, you're right.
Right.
Like if you dream about something, it's not just a dream. A lot of energy or entities are trying to talk to you, and you might be ignoring them when you're conscious, so they're going to talk to you in your subconscious. So it could be something that's like so far outside of your immediate realm of possibilities that it's like I couldn't possibly. So that's where I love the work that you and I do. and no one can do what we do, how we do it. So it's not ever the same, but we do similar work in that we offer the space and the container to explore the what could be and to get out of that I couldn't possibly. That's how I kind of think about it.
I think it's fascinating. And, I notice, especially in doing coaching work with clients, how much resistance a lot of times we put up, which makes sense, right? That's not a judgment. It just is. I mean, again, based on conditioning or just previous life experience, trauma. I mean, there's a variety of reasons, right? Why we create resistance. And ultimately, it usually comes down to a fear-based response, because anything that's unfamiliar ultimately creates a fear response in our bodies, and our brains are very hardwired to keep us safe, survival mode, right? That makes sense. It's interesting. I had an experience with a woman last week that I met with for the first time, and in just a brief interaction doing some coaching work, she was very unsettled when we first sat down. And she said that she's like, gosh, I really wanted to just be really present for this. And I just, right now in this moment, I just feel chaotic and scattered. And I said, it's okay. Don't worry. That's just human. No big deal. It happens all the time. We can't control that. I said, but let's see what we can do to regulate your nervous system and just, bring you to a space of calm and presence just for the next 30 minutes or so. So we did a little breathing together, and we did a little visualizing, and she did calm down. She was able to like slow her body, slow her mind, slow her energy. And she at first saw nothing in the guided visualization that we did. And as I was observing her in this experience, I could tell that she was kind of fighting with something internal. But of course, I didn't know what it was. I could just see the kind of the output of it. And when we finished, and I said, is there anything that you would like to share that just came up for you? And she said, I'm really angry. I said, okay, great. Like, tell me about that, because that's such a powerful emotion and such a great indicator that you're moving some energy, that something is shifting within you. So tell me about it. And it turned out the thing that she was angry about is that she saw, for most of the time we did this visualization, which was maybe 2, 3, 4 minutes at most, she didn't see anything. And she really wanted to see something. And then at the very last moment, the thing that she saw was apparently a dream that she'd had from years back, and a dream that she had dismissed because she no longer felt that she could pursue it. And so it frustrated the hell out of her because she didn't want the thing anymore. And I said, that's okay. Just because you have this vision, and maybe or maybe not, that thing will come to fruition the way that you see it. Like, we cannot predict that completely, but let's dissect a little bit. Let's excavate, to your word, Amy. What is it about? What are the things about the dream, right? The vision. Like, what is in that? Let's unpack it so that it's not so much about having the thing, having the experience, that, that outcome. It's what does it represent to you? What is the feeling? What is the value, right? How is it activating your values and feeling in alignment? And when we did that work, we uncovered all sorts of stuff about her inner values, and things that really didn't have as much to do with what she thought, but more about things that she had control of in her immediate time frame. And then she felt free, and she felt empowered, and she came back to feeling calm. And so she wasn't as angry, and she wasn't as chaotic, and she has a divine path to follow with many different possibilities. And it just reminds me that there's so much to unpack when we can calm ourselves down enough to release some resistance and be in this place of excavation. And also, to the word trust, I love the word allowance, right? Because when we can not only trust that we're given the right information, we're on the right path, etc., but we can allow that to unfold. Again, I always come back to this space of freedom and of accessibility, right? Like, what is accessible to us? How can we allow that to be possible? Like, what does that look like? And then when you can see your life and the world around you from that perspective, it's like the best choose your own adventure game.
Nothing has the ability to come into our consciousness unless it's already in motion by some degree. And
Mm-hmm.
so when we have those dreams, they can be breadcrumbs. When some feeling or intuitive hit comes in, it's a breadcrumb or it's a thread to pull. That brings you into not only listening and being able to trust that what comes in is not hogwash or nonsense or just your imagination. If it comes into your consciousness, it's something that lands or resonates with you. I talk about triggers and glimmers. And a lot of times when we're triggered, it's because it's already in us. It's something that's coming up to heal, in my experience. And so when I get triggered or activated, it's like, ooh, hey, welcome in. What's up? And it's such a really nice resonance for me to say, okay, I know this is coming in for a reason, and I'm maybe pretty pissed off. So let me feel into it. Let me see which version of Amy this is. And a lot of times we will get mad because someone has said something or done something. And I'm just talking about like in our, like parents are probably a great example that parents are really great activators because, when we were conceived, we downloaded inside our mother's womb, we downloaded 3 generations or more of different activators, triggers, traumas, all of that. So it's in us. We might not even know it until a certain point in our lived experience where it comes out and you're like, oh, I didn't even know that was there. So that's a really awesome invitation. And I'm going to get to a post that you made in a few minutes that really wraps this up nicely. It doesn't mean that everything needs action, contemplation, energy work, like in that moment. You can be pissed. Things can suck sometimes. Like I always say, like sit in the suck sometimes. Just like let it in. Just let it in. And just be shitty for a minute. And it's a really nice invitation if you're wanting to find out what could be missing or like what you want to do more of in your life that starts with any of those beautiful emotions.
Yeah, I love that. Again, allowing, we can just allow things to just be. I have 2 teenagers and also an almost 11-year-old. And I'll tell you with my teenagers in particular, and, as best I can, I sort of remember what it's like to be a teenager, right? And it's a very tumultuous time of life. You're doing a lot of, self-exploration. You're also very much like kind of having this like inner battle between, your identity, right? Like I'm not quite a kid. I'm not quite an adult. I don't have as much control as I want, but I still want nurturing. I still want to be taken care of, right? So it's this, a lot of like inner stuff is happening, but also the brain development isn't such that they can usually contemplate it or even understand what's happening. And so it creates this whole roller coaster of emotions many times. And as a parent of a teenager, it's just fucking hard. I mean, it's amazing. And we have beautiful conversations and I love my teenagers. And also, you know, when they get angry or when they have these really intense emotions, I have to remember that I don't need to solve everything for them. And sometimes they can't solve it for themselves either. So I can just listen and be there and be present. And that's enough. And I think for ourselves, we can do that as well. If we can just sit there and be present and be enough in whatever that intense emotion is, sometimes that's the best medicine.
So, Hallie, what moves are you excited to be making right now?
I am working on some really cool projects, including writing my first book. So I'm very excited about that. I'm also working with my husband on a new app that will be hopefully available in the Apple Store and the Android, Google, whatever that one's called soon, all about affirmations, because that is something that I am passionate about and one of my favorite tools to start to shift energy and move it when you're ready to do so.
Awesome. When does it come out?
That is a good question. The app should be coming out hopefully very soon. So I would guess sometime this fall in 2024. That is the plan.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about meeting yourself where you are, meeting others where we are, especially as life coaches and what we do within our day to day, how we feel into the day. I want to go to a post even on LinkedIn recently that I just resonated with because I will often share with women that I serve. Some days just sit in the shit. So you said some days suck. Yep. Not every day is rainbows and sunshine. You already know this, but I want to share an alternative perspective. Even on the suckiest of days, there's magic. And on the most beautiful days, there are parts that suck. Guess what, my friend? That's life. So what are you going to do about it? Are you going to wallow? Are you going to push it under the rug? Or are you going to lie to yourself that it doesn't bug the shit out of you? Or are you going to embrace it, honor it, allow it, revel in it because you're okay? You don't need to be ashamed or hide or run away or be angry. It's life and it's glorious just the way it is. No matter where you are right now, you'll be in a different vibration later. So be in the now, experience the now, the good, the bad, the ugly, the magical. It's all for you. So, seeing as my business is called Unlock the Magic, I love always talking about magic. It's such magic when you're able to experience something that is a little disruptive to your day. Now, with that said, if it disrupts your peace, that's a different conversation. But we're talking about trust, allowance, like just being conscious and aware of what's coming in from day to day. Some folks who were not meant to awaken or feel in this lifetime may look at this and be like, feels like a little Pollyanna, if you know that reference, like, oh, chin up, everything works out in the end, everything's fine. It's kind of like toxic positivity. Sometimes it can feel like when we talk in this vein of like everything's okay because you're safe and you're okay. Well, also, we don't know if that's true. That's an invitation for you to look around when things suck and be like, wait, am I safe right now? Am I okay? Check in and see if that's true for you. It can feel a little bit toxic positivity. I say these things all the time. Like, it's for you.
Oh,
Like, shut up.
yeah. Yeah. Shut the fuck up. What are you talking about?
Don't even
Like, I
stop
don't
it.
want it to be okay. Absolutely. I mean, the reality is this. We get to choose, as you said in the beginning, Amy, right? Like we get to choose how we do life and all of it's valid, right? So we get to choose if we want to be a grumpy ass bitch and go through life just being grumpy and negative about all the things, or we also get to choose if we want to find the good in the situations or anywhere on that spectrum in between, right? There's all of it. So I think that the key for any one human is you got to be true to yourself because the reality is nobody else can make you feel any way. You decide if you want to feel a certain way. So if somebody, like if I say something and you interpret it as toxic positivity and you're like, lady, you're crazy. Stop feeding me this toxic positivity nonsense. You are entitled to that opinion and you get to decide how you interpret what I say if that makes you feel that way. And if that's how you want to carry your energy through life, that's cool. Like I'm not personally offended. That's your choice. But I really think that the message here is we get to choose how we show up in our day. We get to choose how we show up in our lives. Some days are good, some days are not so good. Some days are anywhere else on the spectrum. And when we own who we are and we stand in our authentic truth, it doesn't really matter what anybody else says because we're going to unlock our own magic in your words. We're going to unlock our own magic being our authentic self. And if we can all be authentically ourselves, like how great is that?
Mhm.
Because we're all unique and fun and different. And I'd much rather have a world of 8 billion unique, fun, different, interesting individuals than a whole conglomerate of people that are just like little minions going like, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. I mean, that world seems terrible to me.
I mean, that's also another form of copy paste. I think it's for me, like it can come up as invalidating if someone's trying to share something with you, and you can appreciate this as a coach as well. It's like, okay, let's acknowledge the suck. Let's acknowledge what's coming in. And it's your choice as to whether we dig in or we're like, okay, we feel it and then put a pin in it. So it's like, feel your feels. And then it's still, to your point, your choice of how far you want to go with that. So what would you say to someone who was maybe coach curious, like of getting a coach or like working with their energy or their feelings? And how would you recommend navigating if someone wants a coach, a mentor, or a therapist?
I mean, I've worked with all of the above, like on a personal level, right? So this isn't just like as a coach from a professional perspective, but as a consumer of somebody that has worked with many therapists of different varieties, different modalities of therapy, different coaches, again, in different modalities. I have certainly had mentors. I personally think of like a mentor as maybe someone that you're not quite as close to. So somebody that's at like a little bit of a different level. So you're not having maybe as personal of an interaction. That's like my own interpretation. So I'll put that one aside. But I would say that if somebody is coach curious, and I love that phrase, I haven't heard that before. You have to decide what is it that you want to move the needle on. Like, are you looking for a specific thing? Like, for example, if you are in a situation in your workplace that is really toxic or really great, but you want to advance to the next level or whatever the case may be, and you're trying to figure out, I'm at point A and I want to move to point B, right? I think working with a coach in that circumstance is a really great choice because a coach is going to help you move the needle to do something, move something, shift something. If you are considering, like, I have something inside me that hurts. I have something that is painful that I just have never been able to break through. It weighs me down. It feels very heavy. It feels like every time I try to do anything in my life, form a relationship, do anything, I can't shake this thing inside me. I would say in that circumstance, it's really important to look either at, if you're open to spiritual work, energy healing of some sort, like Reiki or any sort of, more in the spiritual realm, or therapy, where there's again many modalities of therapy that can help you deal with any traumas that are existing within you. So that's really where I kind of make the distinction. Like as a coach, and I tell people this all the time, I am not a therapist. I'm also not an energy healer. So if somebody comes to me and they're saying, I've got all this trauma that I need to deal with, I'm like, okay, I'm here for you to support you in whatever way possible, but I'm not your girl to help you heal your trauma. Like I'll help support you in your journey. But if you want to like really heal that trauma and go inward and do that deep work, then let's also get you the support of somebody that does that specific things. Yes, Amy. So we can partner up there. But that's how I recommend moving forward. But on any of these levels, the most important thing is it has to be a match personally, energetically. Like you just gotta like the person. Because I mean, look, there's a lot of coaches. We all do similar but different things, but it has to be like a vibe when you get together, when you see them in person or on Zoom or wherever. You got to be like, ooh, you're my person. And you don't have to define what that is, but you got to just know, and you got to trust yourself, because if somebody doesn't feel like your person, you got to say thank you, and I'm going to find someone else, and it's cool. Like nobody who's a professional with integrity would ever be offended by that. I'd so much rather someone say to me, I really appreciate you, I'm just not feeling it. Cool. Because I don't want to work with someone who doesn't feel it.
Same. I always say it's a full embodied hell yes. Like you're my person, that I'm going to be able to do whatever I want to do or feel. We're going to get there together. So, Hallie, where can we find you?
Come chat with me on Instagram. I'm at Sassy Healthy Fit. That's probably the best place. You can send me a DM. You can follow my many reels that I put up weekly. You can also come to my website, which is sassyhealthy.fit. And I've got many blogs and lots of resources for you there, free resources and courses and meditations and all the good things.
So healthy fit, so do you do coaching like a fitness coach vibe?
No. And in fact, that name might change at some point. It's actually officially Sassy Healthy Fit by Hallie Avolio. When I first started my business a few years ago, I did have more of a lean towards women's health and fitness. But as life evolved and my business evolved, I went more into the life coaching, spiritual practices, and mindset work. And so the name is a little bit, maybe a tiny bit misleading, but you can think of it as I'm being sassy, healthy, and fit in my emotional, mental, and spiritual self, as well as my physical.
Closing remarks as we start to wind down.
I've just really enjoyed this conversation. I think that we have really talked about a lot of juicy stuff that is a bit different than a lot of the podcast interviews I've done. So I appreciate you curating that experience, Amy, and taking us on this journey. I really hope that anybody listening is just kind of playing with a couple of the key words. I would say trust, allowing, being your authentic self. And if you are noticing that you get triggered by things, especially, and the toxic positivity really kind of like strikes a chord with me, because I do hear that frequently, and I do know that that does trigger people. Just be curious and see what it is for you. I'm a fan of the word curious, and I think that we sometimes as adults we forget, we think that's like a kid word. Like you can only be curious when you're a kid, but I think when we're curious as adults, all of this that we've talked about for the last 30 minutes really starts to come together and play around and make something really cool that you may never have expected otherwise.
Thanks, Hallie.
Thank you, Amy. This has been such a pleasure.